Good evening. On this beautiful evening, we have a wonderful guest, Evelina Dzimanaviciute, who is an expert in business coaching. She's a therapist. Whilst I was delivering a seminar at the NLP conference, I saw her seminar too. It was a wonderful seminar, and she used various modalities, used things like mindfulness, NLP, hypnotherapy. She also used evolutionary neuroscience, which is fantastic and fabulous. I really enjoyed your seminar, Evelina. I think it's great for you to come on board as a guest. I'm sure anyone watching this evening is going to take a lot out of some of the things about. Fantastic. So we always start the show with your journey. What brought you into your journey in helping people around the areas of stress and pressure of work and pressure of life? And you do a lot of other things as well, no doubt. The emphasis being around this area. So share your journey, please.
Well, first of all, thank you, Jimmy, for having this opportunity, for having me here with you. Well, my journey really started, well, from my own journey of struggles and in my own experiences. I'm originally from Lithuania, and I came to England now maybe 14 years ago, more than that. And I had a few very difficult years when I came here without speaking the language, without having any money, and without really intending to stay here, but just chain of unlucky circumstances that I've decided that I'm gonna stay and make the most out of what's given for me. Mm-hmm. So I had quite a difficult few years trying to have career at the same time and have a family and study at the same time. And again, I wasn't even speaking the language, but not even once that I somehow doubted myself. I never asked myself, oh, can I do it or can I not? I only asked myself how. And I had those crazy few years of working full time and studying and having a child at home and sleeping 4 hours a night. And that wasn't enough for me as well. I still went on to charity that called Matri that works with suicidal people. And I think there I realized that I probably have something that quite a lot of people don't. And I start to question, what is it that makes a difference between people who just seem to thrive with everything that's been given to them and grow with every experience and become better and improve and learn from it. And then there are some other people who very similar experiences happen to them and they crumble and they don't, to the extent they don't want to be here and they don't want to live here. So yeah, so I kind of started that journey of learning about psychology and who we are and why we do what we do, why we feel how we feel. Mm-hmm. And what is it that makes a difference between how we react to our experiences and our surroundings. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
That's really fascinating stuff, and that must have been really intense work, working with people who around the areas of suicide. It's a very sensitive area, and
yes, absolutely.
The story, a musician, allegedly, from what I understand, I heard in the media, had committed suicide. I didn't know him personally. I'm a big fan of his music. Chris Cornell, Soundgarden. I grew up with his music, and because I grew up with his music and I'd seen him in concert on several occasions, and his tunes are what I grew up with, it really affected me as well, in the sense that it had an impact in I was wondering and couldn't really get my head around. I don't know his personal circumstances. I don't know the full story. Everyone's going through their own journey. Yet in saying that, he was a guy who had so much talent, so much in the way we see success in the Western world, and you think, wow. So I think awareness is really important. People who are suffering and people who do the work that you did or do in that respect deserve so much credit for what you do. It must be very, very challenging and no doubt, yeah, for sure.
Well, what is interesting for me is that, you can have a person who's, let's say, ready to jump off the bridge and you can physically pull them off and, save their life, to say. but then you have that very vulnerable person in front of you who, who'll be angry because they don't want to be here. And, how do you work then with that person? How do you create again that love to live again? And that is a challenge. And that is something that for me was always fascinating of how we react so differently to things that happen to us.
That's really interesting stuff. And I had this conversation with some friends that I knew and some professionals in my field. And just last week we had a really deep, meaningful conversation with some friends, and we talked about how someone who had so much talent and so much we all have to live for, no doubt, in our own way, regardless of how successful we see in the eyes of society. But someone who was in a huge band and had wife and child or children, I think, if memory serves me correct, and I don't know the full implications. And we had this discussion about whether it's genetic, DNA, biological, sociological, social. I mean, and for me, I just felt in my mind it's hard to sort of pin anything down. The way I sort of see it, Evelina, not just around that area, around areas, I think that genetically we do inherit, I think, just like we inherit eye color, skin color. I'm sure the brain, there are some inherent traits that we have biologically. That said, I think also it's a bit like, say, if we look at the physiological, some people, I don't endorse smoking, I condemn it, but you see people who smoke 1 million cigarettes a day and they live till 100-year-old, and people who don't smoke and they get like lung cancer.
Yes.
Not everyone follows that pathway, don't get me wrong, but it's never exact science. And the same applies to the mind. It's like, well, things don't really make sense. And I think that for me, we're sort of only scratching the surface now in terms of understanding the mind. I think that the stuff that you do around evolution neuroscience is going to really move things forward. It's really, really important, I think, that we sort of use technology now to learn more about the way the mind works. Because
absolutely, yeah, there's quite a lot of research and information about neuroscience out there, but then nobody's really taking that knowledge and saying how exactly we can how we can use that knowledge in therapeutic environments. So this is exactly what I'm trying to do, because once you get that understanding of how we really think, what is it really drives us behind the surface, behind our superficial ways of intelligence, of us thinking that we are these, rational, intelligent human beings. At the end of the day, we are who we are as part of all of our experiences, and all of our neurological patterns are shaped based on that. But the predisposition is already there from, millions of years of evolution. So it's not only our lifetime of experiences, there is all of the evolutionary things that can shape us, and our real life experiences of our short lives that we have can only activate or deactivate certain neurological patterns that can help us to cope and react to environment in a specific way. Even if you think of something small and simple as our own negative self-talk.
Of course.
Yeah. So again, that's most of the time it's our biggest critic. We are our own biggest critic. The stuff that we say to ourselves is probably nobody else would ever dare to say it to another person. Of course. It's normal, and yet it limits us. There's a lot of stuff that we could do. There's so much more that we can achieve if we didn't have that. And now there is a very good reason for that, why we have that chat to ourselves. If you think that for millions of years of evolution, our survival depended on belonging to the group. So we are social human beings, and we would not be able to survive on our own as we could today. So our brain developed these very strong neurological patterns to sense any kind of rejection. So we constantly monitoring environment when we're searching for that rejection, so that we can go and do something about it before it actually happens. But what it means that we're constantly experiencing it in our heads with that critique of what is that person going to say? What is that person going to do? And we constantly giving that rejection to ourselves. And it underlines a lot of our fears and phobias. And take it, let's say, public speaking, for example. You know, once you stand up on a stage in front of people to speak, you're suddenly not part of the group. You know, you're there on your own, and you are facing the group with that judgment, and there is exclusion straight away there. So even though today it's not relevant and it's not useful to have that kind of fear, because you know what, if I stand up on the stage and you don't agree with me, or even if you don't like what I'm saying, or whatever it might be, that doesn't mean that I'm suddenly going to be excluded from the society and be left to fight my own predators.
Of course, from a rational point of view, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a great point, and I think that's really important. You made that point because people watching and listening will realize from a rational point of view, rationalizing is straightforward. We know smoking's bad for us. We know what to eat. We know what not to eat. We know certain things are bad for us. We know logically, on one sense, the ability to merge the new brain, the neocortex with the primordial brain sometimes doesn't really work really well, because, and this sort of, in my journey, mindfulness, Evelina, what I found, I thought, okay, in my journey, when mindfulness exploded on the scene, so to speak, it was really, and it's become the in thing and the buzzword. I thought, okay, how practical is it really to introduce these principles that are thousands of years old, and bearing in mind that the world was a different place than what it is now. Now, mindfulness is great. I utilize it and I teach it. That said and done, one of the things I do is utilize in a way that is possible to integrate into the modern world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Years ago, we didn't have to get up in the morning. We didn't have to get up in the morning. We were hunting for food. We were hunter gathering, and like you said, I think you made a really great point there, where if we were isolated from the tribe or the group, we'd be toast. So we needed to be within that group. My language, not yours. If we're not in the group, then we'd be in trouble. So we sort of stuck around the group, and the one who got isolated would be eaten alive, literally. And we sort of take that. And how evolved really are we in that sense? We're in this modern world.
Yeah, well, to answer that, I mean, how evolved are we? You know, if you think that biggest part, oldest part of our brains are the same that are from reptilian times of evolutionary development. And to put things in perspective, first reptilians evolved 300 million years ago. So when you think of our own lifetime and even our own kind of modern history, it's just a grain of sand in overall evolution. So we think of ourselves as these, you know, very clever, intelligent, rational human beings, but most of the time we're just driven by all of these instincts and all of these survival mechanisms that are kicking in for whatever reason. That doesn't serve necessarily purposes of modern world. And you mentioning mindfulness, actually mindfulness is one of those things that can, with practice, can really help us to control the mechanism we are running our lives. And it can switch from that stressful mode of fight and flight into that mode of relaxation, just by simply learning how to focus your attention onto the right things and control your breathing. So
yeah, no, for sure. No, I think that's really important stuff. That's a really good point. And I think the younger you can teach people mindfulness, the better. If you can cultivate it and learn it, and you can learn at any age, it's going to be beneficial. The younger you learn it, the better you're going to be at doing the process. For me, it's sort of working on a practical level, where you're introducing it in a way where you can utilize it effectively and consider the world we live in. Sometimes you read certain material, Evelina, I think that it's idealistic. It'd be great if we could all sit there and watch the sun come up and go down, and in between just...
Well, absolutely. Yeah, you know, it's a very good point. I mean, it's only useful as much as you are able to apply it in your own life, and for as long as you are able to use it as a tool to help control, regulate your own emotional states and the way you respond to environment, any moment in your life. It's, of course, we all can feel, happy and peaceful when we're watching sunset, or, being in a nice nature environment, but feeling of peace with yourself and with whatever is happening, regardless of stresses at work and whatever it is that you're about to face, that is the biggest challenge. And that is something that I think is the biggest work that we are doing with our clients, of teaching them how to regain that control, how to have that peace. And you can choose whether you want to run your life on stress hormones, or whether you want to respond from that more peaceful and rational and intelligent place of your mind. That will be much more helpful in today's environment.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think teaching people disassociation strategies where they can disassociate from a unresourceful state and they can associate to a more resourceful state, whatever that state might be, is quite useful, where you can dissociate from a negative state or a state that is disempowering, and you can reconnect. So the presentation, for example, where you take that rumination or that thought process around the presentation, where you're thinking, okay, it's me, it's them, people get anxious, they might have fear, and so on and so forth. What you can do is maybe dissociate from those feelings and go to a feeling of curiosity or the message you'd like to present to people, and create like a Zen zone where you go into a neutral state to a happy to present state, and you're just in the now, and you're just channeling what you want to say and how you say it, and you make that sort of transition. I think you can do that throughout the day at work. And one of the ways I do some of these processes with people in business, Evelina, I get them to create absorption, to be more self-aware, to be able to dissociate from this empowering state of anxiety, of nervousness, and reassociate to a more empowering state of, even if it's just going to a more neutral state, curiosity. So rather than the negative state piggybacking on the back of the presentation, you then have the presentation piggybacking on the back of a positive emotion.
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, everything that you do will really make the difference. It's not necessarily even what you say and how you say, but what really makes a difference from what inner state of being you actually approach that situation, how you really feel about yourself. And that's what makes biggest difference. And when you do public speaking, and I'm sure you know you'll know that very well, and for many people that we work with who struggle with those phobias and fears, it's the biggest tool that they can create for themselves, and we can guide them to create that, is being able to step into that position of power and belief and curiosity and whatever that is that would serve their purpose. And again, it's different for every person, so you cannot generalize, and each person will have different needs from any specific experience, and they will bring already their own different baggage with their own different behaviors and the way they react to things. So it's another thing that makes me really excited to do what I do, that every person is individual, and there is no any experience that will be the same, and even if the same person comes for the appointment today, they are not the same person that were in my appointment last week. So we always evolve and change how we react to things.
Yeah, so you improve in your own time, in your own pace, and we can all improve. And for me, one aspect of any problem is how we notice it. I think that how we associate, and we can explore by shifting the attention, and we can dissociate and disconnect from whatever that issue is, and reconnect to a more resourceful state, even if the resourceful state is what we practice grows stronger. So we focus on compassion, on love, on gratitude is a big one for me, being grateful. And growing and developing the attitude of gratitude and cultivating the attitude. Could you imagine, Evelina, if you started really young, at 5 years old, practicing gratitude, how strong the default state would be as the person becomes an adult? If someone starts at 5-year-old learning to be grateful for what they have, still having aspirations as they grow older, and really focusing on being grateful and doing a gratitude list in the morning and in the evening, imagine how strong that pathway, that neurological connection will be. And when things go wrong for them, which inevitably they will, the world that we give meaning to has no meaning other than we give it, but we know that life is going to throw you curveballs. Imagine how much better and how much higher quality of life one would have if they could have a stronger default state. Let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being high, if your gratitude default state was 7 or 8, and when you get bad news, you sort of go down a notch or two, you still bounce back, and rather than go all the way down to 1, and you've got to climb yourself back up again. And that's great. I think the work that you do helps people do that. I think it really helps.
Absolutely, yeah, you're right. And you know, talking about your very early life experiences, this is exactly what changes your basic neural structure of how you think and how you perceive things in your environment. And of course, the earlier you can create those resources for yourself, this resource of resilience. The biggest thing that anybody can create for their kids is that belief that no matter what happens, everything will be okay, and just that assurance that can really grow into very strong, powerful resilience later on in life. And some very small things that can go wrong earlier in life that can really affect those people who, you know, end up in centers for suicidal people, just because simply their threshold level of dealing with stuff is so low that they're not able to talk themselves out of their own negative self-talk, that even they have amazing lives and amazing talents and they can have families and great jobs, they will not be able to relate to it on the sense of on the emotional level. So there's one thing that I think it's good to be aware of, that sometimes somebody might come to you and say, oh, you know, I feel depressed, or you know, I'm thinking of suicide, and most of the time any of their friends, they will say, well, you know, what are you talking about? You know, look around, you know, you have wonderful life, you have, you know, great family, you have, that people point them out all of these great things that they have. But the difference is that person actually, of course, they know that they have it. It's not that they're not aware of it, that they are not able to connect to that. It doesn't give them any emotional, emotional good feelings to it.
Exactly, I agree. And the thing is, sometimes in certain situations, I certainly see it with people, patients who've got anxiety, where people tend to relax all the time. And when I help people who've got anxiety, I don't even mention the word relax, because unless they say the word, I won't impose that on them, because they've said it 100 times before. It's something that they've told themselves anyway. If they could relax, they would have relaxed. Everyone else is saying just relax. And I use different terms like muscle energy and ways they can sort of quantify, control what they can control, let go what they can't control. And the thing is, really, it's context dependent too, Evelina, for anyone in life. And one thing might affect one person in one way, and something might affect someone else in a different way. And I think in the world that we live in, we sort of see things from our own point of view a lot of the time, and we don't know what someone else is going through. And you take the biological disposition and chemicals and physiological and neurotransmitters, and I think neuroscience, like you said, gives us a lot of information, and we're now seeing it more and more utilized. But I think on top of that, I think what's going to be quite useful to get a better understanding of the brain and how it works and how different each brain is, just like a thumbprint. Everyone.
Absolutely, that's what is fascinating, because at the end of the day, what I'm learning, what I'm studying, is how we are actually shaped, how our brains are shaped by our experiences, and then by spending some time with that person who comes there to me asking for some sort of help, is helping them to unpick and understand their own experiences, because again, there is no one theory, there is no one way of how things work. It's each person will take their own ways and each of us will create our own strategy of survival, let's say, if you can put it to the basic principles, because that's again our own,
I agree.
primary survival state is very, very powerful, and we create our own mechanism of dealing and coping with stuff, and some of it doesn't serve other purposes and limits our things that we want to achieve.
No, and I think in one sense, Evelina, I think it's quite sad in a way that, now I don't want to get all philosophical and so on and so forth. I think it's quite sad in the way that the world's a great place. There's a lot of fabulous people out there, and I think for the most part, most people are good, of a good heart. Yet all that said and done, we've created an environment for ourselves that people are competing against each other. And competition's okay. Competition's fine. I love sport. I love competing in sport. But then when we finish sport, we can become friends. But the world, the way it's geared up, this corporate world that we live in, it's like, this is my plate of food. This is it's also like this tribal society where it's no different really to what it was millions of thousands of years ago, where people, they might not be fighting what they used to do, but they are doing stuff to each other. They are doing nasty things to each other. They are being hurtful to each other, even if it's just saying bad things, or even if it's like doing bad things. And we do see a lot of it. And I think the society that we live in sometimes can bring out the worst in people, because I think we've got the disposition to be caring and loving, for sure. And I think there's enough for everybody. But it really makes me sad when I see people who, and it goes down to being aware and knowing that when I see people inflicting pain on other people, I think it's really, really sad to think that we go to that extreme, whether it's like having a go. And I'm not treading on eggshells. I know that, fair enough. I'm not suggesting or implying that we don't compete. I think it's healthy, competition's useful. But we live in a world where you go in the corporate sector and there's a lot of great people. There's a lot of stress in there. And you think, you know what?
Yes.
It can be done in a way that's more enjoyable.
Corporate world especially, you are right to point that out. It's very, very competitive. And what happens to us that once we're faced with certain level of threat, our brain kicks in the very same
exactly
protective mechanism as if we are, fighting lions and things. And we are becoming these, aggressive animals, attacking others, and trying to protect ourselves. But of course, it often doesn't serve the purpose, and it's great to be able to guide people back onto their tracks and teach them how you can actually respond from that place of curiosity, from that place of wanting to help and do the good stuff. Because at the end of the day, I'm sure that most of us act with good intentions, and we want good stuff to happen, but sometimes it's not possible, as like I said, certain automatic processes kick in, and we get too angry, we say and do nasty things, and it's too late. It's not something we would rationally decide to do. It just gets out of hand, and it's very important that we recognize that and we learn how to take that control back, so we are not just passing by and observing our own life, that we can really take it back into our hands and decide what it is that we want to do. And most of my work is done really with that, of enabling each and every one of us to have that control back into your hands, to decide how you want to live, how you want to serve others, how you want to be perceived, in your working environment, in your family, and whatever surroundings that you are, so that you can be at peace with yourself and you don't need to respond from that place of stress.
No, exactly. I agree, and I think that's fantastic. And teaching people to do that and having compassion for themselves and soothing strategies are quite useful too. And self-soothing and compassion for other people too is a good thing too. For me, Evelina, one of the things is that people get up in the morning and they log on and check the email. An email can be a threat, someone taking something away from you. A text comes in, It can be a threat. You didn't get this deal. Something's been taken away from you. They go through the course of a day where there's so many threats that can take something away from us. They're constantly vigilant for these threats, and the threats might not be the dinosaur. It might not be the other tribe. It might not be someone trying to hunt you down or hunt for that food. But ultimately, the mind, the rumination, self-talk, we have 60,000 thoughts, they say, every day, roughly. I'm not counting them, that's the estimation. And they say 98% are re-offenders, where what we thought yesterday, we think today, and tomorrow we think the same. Unless we consciously do some of the techniques that you teach, that I teach, and think, okay, think different, we're going to have this pattern. And I think that for the most part, people don't notice it, because the way life goes, and I see, is that you have this paper, and I can rip one piece, you don't notice, I rip two, I rip three, I rip four. And I think that life, we have the resilience to cope with these things that happen, the divorces, the bereavement, it's hard, and life's not fair, life's quite fragile. But I think it's the little things, like the piranhas, the piranhas that bite everywhere. And I wouldn't call them little things because they are perceived threat. And this eventually, I think, like fizzy pop, the bottle of fizzy drink, you shake it, then poof, it blows. And not everyone blows and sort of becomes nervous breakdown, but they become really,
at some point you pass that threshold, and even small little things that should be really irrelevant, those small little pieces of paper that can really do you big harm, and in a way you will respond to it, will not be the right thing to do.
Precisely, and exactly, and then you're right. That's a great point, because normally the way we'd handle a certain situation, we start handling different. Then people come home, and I'm sure we've all done it, where we sort of overreact, whether it's towards the partner, towards the children, towards the boss at work. And the more self-aware and control you are, the better relationships you're going to have. The less you're going to react in that sort of way, where you send that scathing email back or that text back, because it's just going to escalate. Where we can just see the situation more logically, and we can develop develop our brain in a way we start perceiving situations what they are, not the hypothesis of worst scenario. The brain being always looking for threats. The normal brain, we can say, okay, it is what it is. Let's look at the big picture. And if you did stuff throughout the day that sort of took you away from that, and you sort of gave yourself time to have peace and compassion, and you sort of had a day that was more, because I think that the working day as well is outdated. It's industrial revolution. It's time we change. It's a different society these days. If I had my way, I'd change the way the work day is. And I'd get people.
Well, absolutely, yes. I mean, I probably mentioned to you before, but I've created an entire course called Mind Boost, where I'm actually teaching all of those strategies of how we can actually become more productive, more efficient. There's different ways of handling information, different ways of dealing with those stresses, different ways of, perceiving each little thing that happens to us, so that we can, and even looking all the way back to our past. A lot of coaches, they never look at the past. They will take you from where you are right now, look at the future, where it is that you want to go, and then they will work, strategies and steps on how to get there. But in the reality is that a lot of stuff that really holding us back from achieving what we really want is some neurological patterns that have been created in our past. So that's another thing that I do. I never separate coaching and therapy, because for me, you can't really separate the two. You are who you really are, just because of all your past experiences. So even if you're starting from where you are here, you cannot dismiss of who you are, trying to achieve and move on in the future.
Yes,
so
that's a beautiful way of working. That's a wonderful way to work, because no doubt you're going to get people who are strivers, for example, and they're striving to be someone. They're striving to be something. They're striving to be, own and have, and for them it's the social status. They're striving for that title. And what happens for most part is that they achieve it and it wears off. And it's great. I'm, big fan of goals. Goals are great. Fantastic to have goals. What I would say is that if you can't be happy now, it's very unlikely you're going to have sustained happiness down the road. Why kick the can down the road? And I think that from a coaching point of view, it's imperative, because the dynamic coach, this 21st century coach, is all, come on, and when you have this, and you can have this, and you can own this, and you can have that. And this person's running on this treadmill, and they have this, they have that, and they become even more disillusioned, because they realize that it's the illusion they're chasing, that someday, and that's great if you can have all that. My philosophy is that learning strategies to cultivate gratitude, love now. Don't wait for that partner, don't wait for that job, don't wait for that house, that car.
Yes.
Build your happiness now.
At the end of the day, you need to start from the right place, because you
Yes.
can start building anything you like, but if you don't know what you already have now, and if you don't appreciate what it is that you've already gone so far, utilizing your own past experiences as well. And a lot of people, think, oh, this stuff happened to me, and it wasn't really pleasant, so we're not going to go there. And it often just gets bottled up.
Yeah.
But there is a way, actually, that we can look from those experiences from a completely different point of view. And again, the way our memory works, memory is not something static and something physical. It's always changing, and it can be shaped depending on in what circumstances and what surroundings and what filters we put on. And then it can completely transform how we see the future and how we relate to our future events and environment and circumstances.
Yeah, and of course, and the brain being very implicit, where sometimes we don't even know. It could have been something that happened many years ago unconsciously. So we might see someone who looks similar to someone that was maybe someone had someone in their life. It could have been a carer, a parent, an auntie, an uncle, something that they could have been physically or verbally violent, and they might see something that looks similar, as a similar feature, without realizing it. That can stir up a feeling, an emotion, or it could be that they have an experience in life in one area. So the brain being the way it is, sometimes people don't even know. It could be a color, it could be a car. They could have been in an accident very young in a certain type of car or color. They see a similar one without realizing it. So you've got that sort of immediate response, that 6-second, that unconscious response. And I think that the more we can teach people to bring those experiences into the logical mind, the better. And the more we sort of can work on that sort of gap between unconscious, if we want to call unconscious for metaphorical purposes, to the conscious mind, the better. But there is healing to do. And I think that ultimately in the end, I think that the approach used is really great. And I use a similar approach, because we can gloss over the cracks and put a Band-Aid on a gaping wound, and that's all a lot of people do. They become strivers. And I see a lot of them. I've seen many of them that lead in the corporate sector, the promised land, when I have this, when I do that, and they put a brave face on. Not all of them, I'm not saying everyone's like that. They put the brave face on, but inside they're very empty.
Yeah, you're right. And it's a result of this corporate environment, this very competitive world that we're living in. The amount of information that is out there, the competition that is that we have to face is really a lot for us to deal and to cope with. So of course, never mind what we have to face today. Who wants to face stuff from the past as well and to bring it onto ourselves? But in reality, is that if we can, if we are brave to face it, and if we can talk about it and normalize that experience, there is the way that you can bring all of that in and integrate into just your normal memory. So it becomes your strength, it becomes your fuel, rather than by trying to bottle things up. The neurological patterns are still running at the back of your mind, even though consciously you are not thinking of them. And then that happens, the so-called emotional hijacking, as when you mentioned, you face with certain experience situation, and for whatever reason, you are flooded with all of these emotions of fear or anger or whatever it might be, that it's completely inappropriate, and it's not possible to explain it rationally, because it's just not a reasonable thing to do. But emotionally, this is the reason of us not dealing with certain stuff from our past, that it will be running subconsciously in our mind and driving our behavior on many levels.
Because it sort of enters into the now and it becomes a feature of the now. We reassociate to it. And if there's a way to dissociate and disconnect from that memory that's haunting us in the now and reassociate to a more resourceful state. And one of the beautiful things you did in the seminar, which was similar to what I did in the seminars that I teach too, was you made it experiential, where you spoke about the background of what you were doing, which is fantastic, and it's great knowledge to have. One of the most beautiful ways to experience it is to actually experience it as an experience. And I think that we learn through experiences. And when you did the technique and you got everyone to go into a state of awareness and be it relaxed, be it calm, be it peace, whatever works for them, it's a way for them to practice. And I think it's like a sport. We get better by practicing it. We can learn, but we don't get better in the classroom. I think it's really important. What you did and what you do is giving people experiences. That's certainly what I do with people, and I get to experience that. But also, what I would do is normalize when they say, well, I'm struggling to switch off. Well, that's okay. It's not about switching off, because we know with the brain not going to switch off. It's about creating a state of absorption to a more resourceful state. And that could be relaxation. That could be being on a beach. That could be walking in the countryside. That could be a summer's evening. Go to that place. And the more you go to that place, the stronger that place becomes. And the more you can tap into that resource.
Absolutely, because there it's easy for us just sit here and have some sort of philosophical conversation about neuroscience and how we feel and how our brain works. But in reality, the only way we can really help people is by teaching them those very practical skills and resources of something to hold on to, and even utilizing your own physical body. And there is a way that our emotional states, our all hormonal neurochemical imbalances, they reflect on our external physical state. You can see, of course, that physical language, body language of somebody who's depressed and sad will be very different to somebody who's very happy and just full of love or all these positive feelings.
One affects the other, of course.
Yes, but the process can be reversed as well. So teaching our clients to learn those tricks to reverse the process and get themselves into that right physical state of adjusting your own breathing, of adjusting your own physical state. And it actually takes only 2 minutes for a body to completely change its state to the level of neurochemical balance from one to the other. 2 minutes, it's all what it takes from your body to completely go from this stress response of fight and flight into relaxation mode.
And that's wonderful that you bring that up, and I think that's imperative that people at least take that consideration, because I've often wondered sometimes when I turn up to certain corporations how people have had the weekend off, they've had a leisurely weekend, they spend time with family and friends, and they've had a relaxing, wonderful weekend. They turn up on Monday morning, and even before it gets to 10 o'clock, after they've had 8 hours sleep, they need 4 or 5 cups of coffee and 3 or 4 cigarettes to function. I'm like, well, if you need 3 or 4 cups of coffee and 10 cigarettes by lunchtime to function, there's something that needs to be addressed here. At least
absolutely.
That 8 hours. And that's
definitely, there are some much better coping techniques that we can learn.
It's about awareness and practice, and I think that's really important, where you can feel the benefit straight away, but ultimately, like all things, you don't jump in a car one day and you start driving. It takes time and patience and effort and practice. We don't learn language in one day. One session can make a difference, and we don't know how much difference it's going to make to people depending on their response. But ultimately, in the end, the more you practice it, the stronger it is. And I think the more one practices, the better you're going to get at doing it experientially. And I think that also creating experiences as well, where you're able to create those Zen-like moments, be it playing music and or be it playing sport, and finding your passions and reconnecting with your passions. Because when you're really doing stuff you're passionate about, everything else stays in the background. You're just focusing on that sort of passion.
Yes. So creating
for sure. No, it's
part of therapy and work that we are doing is creating that balance for people of looking after themselves and not just running there on existing in this competitive corporate environment, competing all the time and running on stress. It's creating that level of balance and finding times that you can spend for yourself, with yourself, and enjoy what you do.
And one bounces off the other. When you have and you're enjoying life and your energy levels are high and you're at a high vibration level, that impacts work as well. Where you're going into work and you're bouncing and your energy levels are high, your work is more productive. And I think that sometimes they miss a trick where a lot of the training is around external attribution, how we can achieve the KPI, how we can do this, how we can do that, not internal attribution, not what we can control. We focus on things we can't control and we become more stressed. Focus on what you can control. Control your state, teach people that, and the KPI, the external, will look after itself. The product is there. We know.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
You know,
a lot of our ways of working in the modern environment are not really productive and are not really helpful. We are pushing ourselves into that unhelpful state. There are ways of how we can use our environment, how we can use our surroundings, how we can use our diet, how we can use our patterns of sleep and rest, that we can be more productive. There is no need for anybody actually, to be working full 8-9 hour days. It's just simply not productive. You can do the same amount of work in 3-4 hours if you know how to utilize your environment and how to manage your time and how to get into that ultimate state of performance.
And the beautiful thing is that it's not quantity, it's quality. Because you can keep people for 14 hours a day and the quality isn't high. They're just watching the clock and they're getting bored, they're getting frustrated, and they're doing everything to distract themselves from the task in hand. I think that's a really important point, I think. And there's a big picture too. Really, when you think about life, and we're not here for, regardless of what people believe, in this genetic form, this is it. And you think, well, it's a dot on the horizon, and this is it. And I think it's really important people, the social aspect, where they enjoy life for what it is. And I think sometimes people, it's almost like spiritual suicide. Spiritual suicide being they go into a job at 21, Evelina, and then they wait for 65 to retire. It's like, well, that's a long time to wish your life away. And I'm not implying everyone can do what they love doing. You do what you can, but also you create an environment away from work where you're vibrant too, when you're doing stuff. And I always encourage people to, when I say spiritual suicide, I mean where it's like they dread the week and the weekend distraction for the week. It's like when the weekend comes along, they drink excessive alcohol. I'm not suggesting what people should do with their lives, but I'm saying that they sort of bury their head in the sand. And the week comes along and it's like a distraction. I think that, okay, people do what they can do, and not everyone is forced to do what they love doing, and they can work towards that. But what I'm saying is that I encourage people to do things they love doing outside of work too, and have a cut-off.
Absolutely, and having some sort of bigger purpose and
exactly. Playing in a band,
your values, because what often happens that we spend all of our time working. What for? To earn some money. Why we're earning some money? To buy stuff. Why we need to buy stuff? To impress people that we might not even like. Yeah. And it's kind of like all of this chain reaction of what is it that you're really doing this for?
And the amazing thing is that you can only live on one roof. You can only drive one car. You only eat so many meals a day. And you think sometimes there's got to be a fine line between a balance between striving for this thing that people go for and thinking, okay, well, actually, you know what? I'm living well. I'm going to sort of get a balance here. Because you see a lot of people, and I've been to many motivational seminars over many, many years, and some talk sense, some have their own map of the world, and the way I'm seeing things, I think to myself, you know what? There's a fine line between wishing your life away to when you retire, to building this portfolio of property, or building this, and it's okay if that's what people want to do, but I think sometimes they lose sight of life in general. And I think that for me, connecting people to wonderful experiences of joy, of happiness, it doesn't have to be an exotic holiday. It can be going for a beautiful walk in the countryside. It can be on our doorstep. There's plenty of things to do. Because
well, I guess anything, different people will create happiness for themselves from different things. And if you can have amazing house and amazing cars and it makes you happy, well, that's great. But it's when you end up chasing stuff, and it doesn't give you anything, when you still feel empty, then that's where it's something else that needs addressing.
Yeah, no, exactly, and I'm not, against people having that, and many people like nice things. I like cars, and I like to live in certain areas, and we all like things like that. But ultimately, it's not suspending happiness until we have that, because if you can't bring it to the now, and the thing is, you've got a better chance of achieving what you want if you're in a better place yourself. If you're going to manifest anything in your life, the way I see it is this way: if you're going to plant a seed, if every day you moan at the seed, when you're going to grow, if you kick the ground and got the seed out, it's not going to grow. You've got to cultivate it and water it and look after it. And the same goes for us, really. We sort of complain, and why he got this and why she got that. And I love to travel and see new places and do different things. And that said, and it's extension to other things. I look forward to stuff too, and I'm sure people do. But ultimately, I know that there are things in life that I equally appreciate, that you can walk outside and go for a nice walk and really connect to the experience and feel it, and really feel it in your heart, and do a nice meditation, and that's quite useful too. I'm sort of bearing in mind that we're sort of running out of time now. I'd like to mention you've got some workshops coming up. Evelina, could you tell us a bit about the workshops you've got coming up, and how people can get in touch with you? And
yes, well, I do run some monthly classes of mindful hypnotherapy that I do focus on different topics of stress, better sleep, anxiety, different various topics that we can look into and learn different tools of how to cultivate those seeds for ourselves, as you mentioned, to deal with specific situations. But my biggest project that I'm working now is this Mind Boost course that I mentioned before, and that is this intensive weekend course where we can really learn all of the skills and resources that can teach us how to cope better with our environment, how to deal with information. That includes as well photo reading, because I think it's just such an amazing skill to have, to be able to utilize that our subconscious part of the brain that is much more effective, much more productive, and then how we can utilize that to drive our performance, to create that resilience for ourselves, so we can achieve our goals in much more productive, much more time efficient way, and yet we can still have that inner joy and peace, and create that work-life balance for ourselves. So yes, if anyone interested, then log on to my website, which is beyourlight.co.uk, and you can look for all the information of the events and things that I'm doing there. If you want some more information about the course, then you can email me directly and I'll send you some more information. And my email is evelina@beyourlight.co.uk. And of course, I'm more than happy to share some offers, discounts. So please email me, and with whatever your interests are, and we can take it from there.
Yeah, no, for sure. I completely think that the work you do is fantastic, and having been to the seminar and having presented at the same conference and having experienced the seminar, I think it's wonderful. You do some great work, and I certainly would recommend it. No, I think it's great stuff that you do, and I think the more people that do what you do, the better place the world will be, because I think that the world needs more love and compassion and more gratitude. And I think that, at least in my opinion, I think that the world certainly needs to get a more balanced perspective on this work-life balance. Just generally, the stuff that we see going on in the world these days, to bring back that sense of compassion and love and gratitude. There's enough for everybody. We can all live well. We can all do well. We can all save competing for the sporting field, and we can all come off the sporting field and be friends again. And I think it's really important for me to have people who do what you do, to help people experience life in the way we're all entitled to experience life. We're entitled to be happy. We're all entitled to live a wonderful life. And ultimately, life can be quite challenging. It can be quite fragile. And life isn't always easy, but life can also be beautiful and wonderful. And I think that's really important that we make a conscious effort to work towards that. I really want to thank you for coming on board. It's been fantastic, and no doubt we'll keep in touch, and we'll have you back on board the show. And carry on doing the great work, Evelina, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much for having me here, and I'm sure we'll keep in touch. Have a lovely evening.
I will indeed.